Hello, and welcome back to the CG Bros. This is Brother Damien, and many of you have written in asking us what the best way is to create a glowing, planetary atmosphere in Maya. In this session, I'm going to show you one great way to do it, using an often overlooked object in Maya called a volume primitive. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Now there are a lot of ways to do this kind of effect, and the requirements for a given shot often dictate the approach that you should use. Now this method I'm going to show you is an updated oldie but goodie, and the thing I really like about it is that it's fast, simple, flexible, and it really looks great. First, let's create a sphere to represent the planet. NURBS or poly is fine, just make it relatively high resolution. Now I'm going to use a polysphere. So I'm going to come up to Create Polygon, Primitive Sphere, and set the scale to 1, and the divisions to 100 by 100. And if you're using NURBS, enable Advanced Tessellation and set the number U and V to at least 20. Alright, let's go ahead and create a directional light to act as the sunlight on our planet. So let's come up here to Create, Lights, Directional Light. Now I'm choosing a directional light for the sunlight for two reasons. One, it's more realistic for space environment lighting. In space, while light is technically coming from a point, planets are typically so far away from their light sources that the rays that hit them are almost parallel. And two, directional lights are easy to position, rotate, and adjust. Rays from a point light emit radially, and I would need to position the light a great distance from the planet sphere just to look right. The point lights that are too close will betray the illusion of scale that we're trying to create here. And repositioning them becomes quite painful, and take it from me, when it comes time for rendering out your shot, lights located at great distances are really tough for Maya and most other programs to calculate, and can even bring the largest rendering farm to a complete halt. This definitely won't be impressing your boss or client. Alright, let's go ahead and come up to the Create menu, and select Volume, Primitives, Sphere. Now this sphere volume will act as the boundary for our atmosphere. Let's go ahead and set the scale at 1.3. This should give us a nice thin shell of atmosphere that will help sell that the planet is large in scale. Alright, let's go ahead and take a quick render just to see what this looks like. Now this looks pretty nice, and it does look like an atmosphere. Let's go ahead and tweak it to refine the look. So by default, the volume primitive sphere is assigned a Sphere Fog Shader. Let's select the volume primitive and open up the attribute editor, and click on the Sphere Fog tab to view the settings. Now, I like to use the Interactive Photorealistic Rendering Panel, or IPR for short, so I can see the effects of parameter adjustments rendered in real time. This gives me faster feedback on my changes. We all know that time is money, so getting the job done quickly and looking good not only builds confidence, but impresses the boss or client. Let's go up to the Window menu, select Rendering Editors, and hit Render View to open it. Click on the IPR render icon, or you can just come up here and click at the Render IPR button to render the frame, and then drag a selection region around the area that we want the IPR to update. Let's go ahead and continue tweaking. Alright, let's start by modifying the color. I'm going to hide the sphere so we can see the changes a little bit better. Let's go ahead and open up the IPR window again. So click on the color swatch to open the controls. And as we modify some of these settings, we can see the IPR update as well. Let's select a light green color for the volume. Now we might also tweak the transparency of the volume, the incandescence or self-illumination, or glow intensity, and the density settings to get different and interesting results. We can also use a color ramp to color the volume. Open the color ramp section and down to the color ramp input selector. Let's select Y gradient. And we can see that the ramp goes from top to bottom and adjusts as we move the position markers. Now if we need more control, we just click the side button to open up the ramp. You can refine the ramp by clicking on the ramp to add markers or delete them by hitting their close box. Now going back to the color ramp input selector, let's change the input to concentric. Now we can see that the ramp is now oriented from the center outwards. When transparency is selected as the input, the ramp will subtract whatever color is in the transparency swatch, and it's adjustable using the slider. Now keep in mind that moving the slider all the way to black resets the color swatch. Now I almost always work in object space. If we check the illuminated box, this allows for lights in the scene to influence the volume, scattering light through it, as well as enables the volume to receive shadows cast by other objects. We can adjust the amount of light scatter from our light source. With a little tweaking, we can make the atmosphere brighter when it's backlit, creating brighter rims on the dark side. And keep in mind that rendering will be a bit slower with Illuminate checked on, because Maya now has to calculate shadows and light scattering. Shadow map resolution and filter size may also have to be increased, as well as increasing the volume samples override on the volume shape node to scare away any artifacting in the shadows. Okay, let's go down here to the drop-off section, and let's adjust the edge drop-off. I usually keep the drop-off method set to scale opacity so that the density falls off beginning from the volume boundary towards the center. But something else to keep in mind here is that since we are working with a 3D volume, we can also apply 3D textures to the mappable channels. Now, this really opens up a lot of unlimited possibilities for creating and animating different types of textural effects in the volume. Go ahead and click on the Map button to open up the Create Render Node window, and let's select 3D textures to filter the list, and select the Crater shader. We can now modify the attributes as we wish to get some pretty interesting effects. Let's go ahead and break the connection and assign a volume noise shader and adjust some of the parameters on it. Let's go ahead and break the connection again and assign a cloud shader and change some of the settings on that. Now you can definitely see where this is headed, and I encourage you to try different shaders, mappings, and values. And of course, these attributes are all completely animatable. Alright, let's go ahead and break the connection to get back to our uniform glow. Let's also go up to the color swatch and change the color back to a yellow-green. And lastly, let's create a shadowing effect in the fog by setting up the color ramp input to Y gradient, and editing the color ramp to have a transition from black on one half of the ramp to white on the other. We can then rotate the volume sphere such that the shadow faces away from the sunlight. Now, I really like the flexibility of this effect because it not only looks good from far away, it looks good close up as well. Alright, let's end it here, and I invite you to view part 2, where we take this effect to the next level, where I'm going to show you how to replace the default sphere fog shader on our volume primitive with Maya's fluid shader,